Welcome to a special edition of 10 for the Chairman. I'm here, my guest Josh Herman, our art director, character art director, who's based here in Los Angeles, but he's the head of the global character pipeline. And we're doing a slightly different format. We've sort of decided to try and switch around the 10 for the ... show so that we ask questions specifically about something we want to talk about, and then you guys come back with questions and we sort of pick the most popular and the ones that are suitable for the topic. So we have 10. The topic was about sort of character and most specifically sort of heads and facial stuff. So we're going to get to that, but at first I'd like to say thank you to Davidian, who sent these very nice little teddy bears of Squadron 42. Mine's got a little name on the back. There you are, Chris Roberts, very good. I think there's quite a few more of these showed up. Now I just need to make sure I put this here where he doesn't collapse on the table and he can listen to our answers. Sit down, Teddy. Not very good. All right, one more time. Come on, Teddy. Sit correctly. There you go. See? Not too much abuse of teddy bears, as you can see. All right, first question is from the Deadly Kenny and Gaz Lawal, Bacon of War, Kenzie Snow, and Steve Hunter. So I guess it's a question asked by quite a few people.
Popular one.
They all asked, so we know that character heads will be scanned in. However, will we be able to manipulate these scanned versions to customize them to create our own characters, or will we only be able to select a specific set? For example, facial features, body morphology, etc. So, well, a couple of things. We've got sort of two levels of heads. One is we scanned a whole bunch of our actors that we had while we were doing the Squadron 42 shoot, and also a bunch of Foundry 42 folks and Imaginarium folks. So I think we have over about 160 heads or so already scanned. They're in various process of being sort of brought to sort of final quality. And we kind of have a plan to modulate and let you sort of change and build your own player head that's not a preset one. So our plan isn't really to say, oh, you can have one of these 8 male heads or one of these 8 female heads. You pick sort of a base head, maybe combine a few of them, and then also alter the various features on it, your hairstyle, skin color, eye color, sort of the general stuff, and sort of adapt it around. So I think you'll be able, as a player, to sort of build any kind of face that you want. I mean, I think a little later on there's another question that's sort of relative to this, ask that question. But the way that we have it right now is we have 18 sort of, I guess, player heads, which I think are evenly split between male and female. And so those would form the base, 9 archetype heads for male and 9 archetype heads for female. And then from there on, you would sort of customize it.
From there, you could take pieces from the other ones like you talked about that we scanned, and then you could kind of create your own custom one based off of that.
Yep. But we won't let you can't have Mark Hamill's head or Gary Oldman's head.
Definitely not.
Okay, so that's the first question. Second question comes from Lieutenant Commander Draco and Tsukabi, I think, Tsukabi. Not sure if I pronounced that right. They are asking, are both wondering about hairstyles and how customizable will they be?
So we're gonna have a lot of different variations of hairstyles. We've already scanned, like you said, 150 actors, and so each one of those is going to have a lot of different variations. You're not going to be able to customize it in the same way, like you're not going to be able to comb one hairstyle that granular. You're not going to be able to do that. But you will have a huge selection both in style, parting, lengths, colors.
Yeah, I think we have. We have. Besides, we have specific hairstyles that we've chosen for actors, and we have some that are specific to the actors. But we also have, again, like set of NPC hairstyles.
Yes. And
so we have, the various. You can be a skinhead. You can have a mohawk. You can have a Caesar cut. You can have a ponytail, and all sorts of different hairstyles. So if you think of a hairstyle out there, I think we'll
have it. Something, if there's
we
one
have
out there.
an archetype for it that you can choose, and then you can choose the color of your hair, and then you can put that on your head. So basically, the base would start with an archetype head, then choose what kind of style of hair you want, what kind of hair color you want, eye color you want, maybe what skin color you want, and then on top of that you can start to adjust facial features. So it won't be too dissimilar to a lot of sophisticated sort of avatar creation setups in other other online games or even other single player games. Okay, next question comes from Malagor, who asks, with the amount of detail in character creation, will it let me make my own doppelganger? So what do you think, Josh? Do you think we'll be able to make a doppelganger?
I think with the amount of heads that we've scanned, you'll probably be able to find somebody who has like eyes like yours, or a mouth like yours, or different facial features like yours. So with that, you could probably, like Mr. Potato Head, like put those pieces together and find something that looks kind of like you.
So you should be able to try to get close. I mean, I do sometimes when I play games try to make the character look like me. Don't necessarily succeed all the time, but you never know. Okay, next question comes from Hearts, who asks, character heads as in the modeling of the heads. So I guess they're trying to qualify the question that we asked when we were soliciting these a while back. If so, I'm curious about how long the process takes to model an in-game render of someone's face. For what we do, we always, currently anyway, we don't model it just from scratch artistically. We scan a person, an actor, fully. We have a whole rig of 50 plus cameras that go around the head, and we essentially use photogrammetry to digitize and take a 3D snapshot of both the geometry or the sort of 3D mesh of the head, as well as what the face textures would be. And then we take that and then we do a lot to it after that. So I don't know if you want to talk about
that, we kind of, especially for some of the main actors, we do full facial capture, so they're getting blend shapes on specific ways that they talk. So that adds a whole nother kind of layer. So that's a really difficult thing to do if you're just going to be sculpting a head from scratch, because I think our characters have like upwards of 400 blend shapes.
Yep, over 400.
So that would be
shapes.
400 individual sculpts that we would need to make to match what we're doing. So it's really not an approach we would want to be taking to get the realism that we want, especially for the actors that we have.
We work with, there's a company called 3Lateral who are sort of quite well known for their head rig and head animation technology, and sort of pushing forward the field of scanning live real people and bringing them into the 3D world. We've been working with them for quite a while. They've also in the past, they did Rise, for instance, back for Crytek, which is in the CryEngine, and our head rig of the head rigs out there is, we'll talk to it in a bit, but by far the highest fidelity head rig that they've done, I think, and it's probably higher fidelity or up there with anyone else's head rig, but so it's a big process. So if you go in and do a full set, an actor will sit in this sort of whole scanning setup, and we will take 78 basically facial poses for them. So it's sort of like things like kind of like you scrunch your nose or raise an eyebrow, and you have to do that, and each one takes about a minute, collects all the data from all the cameras, builds it on the computer, and then you take another one and you do it. So it can take anywhere, depending on how quick or slow the person in the seat is, an hour to 2 hours to do the full 78 pose set, and that builds, and that basically gets built down by a lot of the techniques that 3Lateral do into this sort of 300 pose blend shape setup, and then of course on top of the 400 pose blend shapes, I think it's about 440 actually for our higher tier characters. It also has, a whole bunch more. It has bones underneath that, like I think something like 100.
And that also drives
joints.
Specific maps. So when they're doing those specific faces, like the forehead, it drives wrinkle maps and animated diffuse maps for our higher end.
So it's not just blend shapes. It's not just bones. It's a wrinkle map, which is sort of telling the shader kind of what parts of the skin. So that's almost like the
wrinkle information you see here.
Yeah, kind of like it's a bump map, and then the animated diffuse is sort of showing like how your color changes in your skin. So you scrunch something up, maybe you'll get
really
white
red
or white, red or whatever it will be. So it's a pretty long process, but after even doing that, we bring it in and then we actually do sort of an artistic pass.
Yeah, kind of like a makeup polish or makeup pass in a way, because a lot of when you see those actors getting scanned, it's you usually have to scrub their face, and so you can get these dots and you get really accurate information of what they look like. But that's also not what they would look like on the film set, because they don't have like makeup, and when you go on film sometimes, most of the time, you have like a very specific people that just do that.
You don't look like you woke up in the morning.
Exactly.
Everyone makes you up to look really great in a film, light you properly, and so when we actually scan the actors, we don't want any makeup on them, because it's best for how they sort of build the 3D head.
Exactly.
So then we have this process that we bring the head in, and then we sort of do our own sort of makeup pass on the character and set it up in such a way that they're going to look like a movie star running around in our 3D world. So that's part of our process. So we do all this kind of assembling of the data that we scan, and then we bring it in here and do our own pass on top of it to sort of take it up to that extra level. We really work on things like the eyes, the tongue, the teeth, and we still have a whole bunch of additional graphics work to be done. So the eye shader is going to get a lot more work.
The hair shader.
Hair shader is a big one, so that's our probably weakest point now. So a lot of the images you'll be seeing during this 10 for the Chairman, we don't have what our intended hair shader is going to be, but our hair shader is going to be to the level of the best hair shaders you've seen out there in real-time games, and then we'll also work a little bit on the skin shader too. So our goal is to sort of, when the characters, when you play Squadron 42, for instance, the level of character tech and visual level will be as good or better than anything out there. So that's what we're shooting for. We're working really hard on it. We've got a lot of talented people working on it. We're not there yet, but I think you'll be seeing in this particular episode sort of some stuff along the way, and it's only just going to get better. Okay, so the next question comes from Perry Hope, who asks, wouldn't it be nice to get some faces from your backers? Is that even possible? Can you tell us what is the hardest part of character creation and why? We just talked about how the process we go through the scanning, and so
it's pretty in-depth, yeah.
It's pretty in-depth. I mean, so we definitely could scan some backers out there, but we would have to have the full rig set up. Right now we have the rig set up at Ealing Studios. It takes a while to set it up, so we sort of kind of have a sort of semi-permanent setup at Ealing, because that's where we've been doing all the Squadron 42 shooting, and so when we bring an actor in and we shoot with them, we also make sure we scan them, and at the same time, if we've got Foundry 42 crew people or people from over here in LA or people from Imaginarium and they want to sort of appear in the game, we scan them too. It's not out of the realm possibility that we could have a setup somewhere and a few lucky backers could be scanned and we could put them in the game, and there is a reduced sort of scan set that we do if you're not going to be up front doing lots of talking, more like sort of a background player in a movie, is what we
like extra.
Extra or something, which is, instead of 78 poses, I think it's something like 18 or 16 poses. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a much reduced set because we don't need to do quite as much, because we don't build a full 400 blend shape setup for them. So there is, that could potentially happen, although it requires a lot of work to do it at the fidelity that we're putting into the game, because even our background characters have to stand up to the quality we do for our main characters. We've talked about it, haven't made any decisions. We may do something like that for fun in the future. We've also looked at some sort of standard kind of techniques you can do, like, for instance, you could take a webcam and you could look into it and go here, and you could probably map your face there.
Map your face, yeah.
The question we would have is it going to look weird at that level? And then
the question you run into with like that homemade either iPhone or whatever photogrammetry is that the lighting condition and then the fidelity. So as we were just talking, we want all of our characters to be able to stand next to each other. So you should be able to stand next to, as a player character, next to Gary Oldman or any of our top tier characters. And if your lighting is weird when you're taking your pictures, it's going to give us wrong information, and the textures might not be as good a quality, and it just creates a scenario where one can look worse than the other, and that's not really what we want.
Yeah, no, we don't want you to pull you out of the game because someone looks like they were shot on a really cheap camera with not great lighting, and everyone else looks like a movie star. I guess to be determined. It is possible, but to do it at the level that we would like would be difficult. Okay, so the next question comes from Copernicus, I guess.
I think it's Copernicus.
Well, it's got two O's.
So Copernicus.
Copernicus, there you go.
I think so.
How soon will we be able to see the heads on the NPCs or players in the persistent universe? That would make for some nice variety, and how editable will they be once implemented for character creation? We are working on getting a variety of heads into the persistent universe. We're actually kind of working on some of that stuff now because we want to mix it up some, and obviously we're working hard at work at it on Squadron 42 because, as you can appreciate, in Squadron 42 we actually have about 350 speaking parts, which is an insane amount of speaking parts. Like, most movies would have maybe 30, 40 speaking parts or 50 speaking parts. It's a lot. And so each one of those will obviously need their own unique head. So a lot of it's going to be supplied by the custom actor scans, but some of the stuff will be also done sort of background characters where we would almost assemble the heads, kind of like how you'd assemble a player head.
Much like the character creation that we were talking about earlier. So it is kind of one of those things where once we've got that system in place for Squadron for the background and for all those speaking roles, it's really not much work to get it over to the PU as well, because it's basically the same system.
Yep. So so I would say not in 2.5, and not. We're going to try and get a few things in for the next release in the Star Marine one, but as we move on to widening out the persistent universe with procedural planets and having some more landing locations, we're going to get more variety in there. And then, of course, Squadron 42 is going to feel like a movie. Everyone's going to feel like their own, cast member running around. It's all going to be very high quality and very cool. So, but yes, we are very focused on that. So we're sort of feeling like we're coming over the hump of getting the tech kind of to the place where we'll be able to mix and match some stuff. We still got some more stuff to do on the kind of morphing, build your own face stuff, but just generally having a wide set of NPCs to be able to use is very close now. Okay, so the next question comes from Lamac, L''MAC. I don't know if they're a French Macintosh or not, but who asks, will the faces we see on our characters, other players, and regular NPCs be of the fidelity we saw on the character in Pupil to Planet, or better, or more simple like characters in the Morrow Tour? Okay, so forget the Morrow Tour. That was a whole combination of things: bad lighting, broken shaders, quick assets that hadn't gone through any of our pipeline. So you'll be interesting to know that the character in Pupil to Planet is a character called Joachim Steiger in Squadron 42, scan of the actor. And what you saw in Pupil to Planet was an untouched up head, and that was a tier 2 character. Our rating is, our top is tier 0, so that is what we use for Gary Oldman, Mark Hamill, Liam Cunningham, Mark Strong. They're all tier 0. Then tier 1 is the next level, so actually the actor Stephen Bislin that was playing Morrow is a tier 1 head, and then the next one down is a tier 2 head, which was Joachim Steiger, and then we have a tier 3 head, and that's basically our ratings. But all the heads have pretty much similar fidelity, and they all have to stand up next to each other, because you could be standing in a conversation with a tier 0, a tier 1, and a tier 2. And really the big difference between the tier 0 and the tier 1s and the tier 2s is a tier 0 just has more facial density in the mesh. So like, for instance, we use about 40,000 polygons when you're up close to a tier 0, whereas a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 are about 10,000. Now 10,000, much less, but 10,000 is, up until now, the top level of a AAA, up close,
even
cinematic
our
head
bottom
character.
level is the top level of most of the games.
You'd have to look close to really see that much difference. I mean, we do it for the Gary Oldman or the Mark Hamills of the world, because we really want to capture every single nuance of their face when they're performing and talking,
their
and the
facial
emotion.
performance.
And so in those ones, for the main characters, you're right up close to them and you want to have some emotion to it. We're just going for a little extra fidelity in the character. But a tier 0 and a tier 1 essentially have almost the same number of blend shapes, almost the same number of bones. And so outside of the mesh itself having just more density of faces, it's pretty much the same. And so the difference is really just, the wrinkle maps and everything also give you a lot of detail, but maybe just a kind of, a little bit of
subtle bits in the animation, I think, is going to be some of it. The texture sizes are the same between all the heads, so that really doesn't change much. Certain characters, like you mentioned, like Mark Strong has a very specific way that he speaks. So he, kind of like me, actually speaks mostly out of one side of his mouth, so you really want to capture that. Right, and that's because he's a tier 0, so you really want to get that across.
Yep. So like I said, ignore Morrow's Tour. That's the past. We've moved on quite a lot, and you can see in this video some of the differences for what it is. And like we were talking earlier, there's going to be a fair amount of improvement even from here in terms of what
Oh,
we're
yeah.
doing in the shader. So it's generally the way it works in development is, you think something looks good, and then next year it looks better, and the year after it looks better, and you could just look at the Hornet or the Bengal carrier that we had when I launched the 2012 crowdfunding campaign, and I thought that was awesome looking, and I think a lot of other people did. But every year I see stuff move, and now if you've just seen the video with Chris Smith's new Hornet or the stuff that Nate was showing of the Bengal, it's like a whole nother level.
Totally, yeah.
And that's kind of where we're pushing on the heads. But what we want to do is we want you to feel like you're in, say, Squadron 42 or even in the PU, having a conversation, interacting with NPCs, and the quality of the character animation and the facial animation is what previously you would have experienced in a pre-rendered cinematic. Right. And so that is the goal, to really try and put you in the story, so to speak. So that's what we're shooting for. I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it definitely it's taking a lot of hard work. But we've got a lot of good people doing it, like Josh here and his character team. We have a whole facial animation team over in the UK and a whole really talented cinematics team over in Germany. So next question comes from Fathom, who asks, will animations adapt to our characters as they get older or recover from past injuries? For example, if my character is lucky enough to reach old age, will he or she take longer to stand up after sitting, or perhaps start to walk with a limp, having been shot in the leg earlier in the game? So we were definitely planning to do some animation that is specific to injuries and stuff like that. If you get shot in the leg or shot in the arm, we're actually planning to have that sort of impact and reflect on the character's animation. We haven't specifically thought about you aging as a character. It's actually a very cool suggestion. We do, and we have done in Squadron 42, specifically captured different walking and running sets and locomotion sets for the different actors, because obviously someone like, say, Mark Hamill, who's a little older, will move differently than a 20-year-old.
And a younger Mark Hamill.
Yeah, the younger Mark Hamill. You never know. I mean, we're definitely going to have sort of older person locomotion walking around NPC animation sets, and we'll have the younger ones. So at that point, it may actually not be that difficult to sort of move you through those. But we haven't got that implemented yet. But I think that's actually a pretty cool idea.
That's a really cool idea.
You never know in the future. Next question comes from Kairan, who asks, with a large number of incredibly detailed characters at once, both NPC and player, what's the design plan to keep this from blowing up client resources within the persistent world game? We've thrown a bunch of numbers around, like, the tier 0's got 40,000 polygons for the face. It's got 440 blend shapes. The mesh itself, I think, with all the blend shapes and everything, was about 300 megabytes without LEDs.
It was really, really expensive before.
So you could have maybe 1 or 2 heads on the screen. And we had like 44 different areas of like blended wrinkles and blended diffuse, and the texture was really high. So we used to have about 96 megabytes of blend textures, which is quite a lot of that. And then we had the diffuse, normal spec, transmittance, and the scattering mask, which were all these extra layers to bring the stuff in. So we had about 150 megabytes of texture memory per head at the resolution we're doing at these characters. That's a lot. That was a big focus of the graphics group and how to bring that down. So we brought both the mesh data down and also the texture data down. So we basically reduced the 300 megabyte mesh stuff down to about 30 megabytes. So that was more about the base mesh and how we were going to delta it and some clever compression stuff they're working. And then we also took the cost of all the textures down, from something, I think, for, we did a special thing for the wrinkle and the blend maps and stuff, where we went from 72 megabytes just for those down to 6. So, essentially we've done sort of a 10x saving, which makes it much more viable to have a lot of these heads and that detail in the game, which is good. And then the last sort of segment that we've worked on is, of course, when you got 440 blend shapes, and I think there's like something like 175 joints or whatever. I don't think we put this on our cliff notes, but that's a lot of controllers. So we have the blend shapes, we have the joints, and I believe there's also some other controllers for the wrinkle maps and the diffuse map. So in all, we ended up with very close to about 1,000 controllers to animate a face. So that's kind of the equivalent of animating 1,000 joints. And if you have 10 characters, that's 10,000 of them. Right. And that's if anyone knows about game animation. That's a lot of
It's
bones
a lot.
and joints to do. So one of the things that's quite nice is we've been working with 3Lateral, and they have a sort of rig logic that has a lot fewer inputs. That's sort of more about kind of the facial poses of positions, and then that gets translated into where to move, what blend shape to fire, or where the joint is, or what blend, or what normal map or diffuse maps, wrinkle maps firing, and that's what we call the runtime rig technology, and it's also very critical because we use that. That's how we're going to be able to have all these different heads and faces and be able to blend them and stuff. It doesn't matter. We can play the same dialogue on whatever head, doesn't matter. It can be Mark Hamill's, Gary Oldman's, it can be a custom character one, because it goes through this rig logic that takes in the inputs and puts it out to the the appropriate blend shape and joint and everything else like that. And that also has the advantage of it has about 183 inputs versus about 1,000 of the controls. So it's a lot less data that's going to go through on our animation data for the facial, which is
another big savings too.
So those are all the things that we're trying to keep the client resources down, and we have a few other plans, but I think we're going to be able to deliver high quality that you normally would see in pre-rendered cinematics, but you would actually see it in the game live in real time. So that's pretty good. Last question comes from Felicia Faster Than Light, who asked, the two character design approaches I'm familiar with are the traditional choose from a number of presets approach, or the newer actually being able to edit vertex points within certain ranges approach like Black Desert. Which approach is Star Citizen going to use, or has the crew come up with an even more diabolical approach that will knock our socks off?
I think it's definitely a combination of both, like we talked about earlier. So starting with kind of a preset, you can choose your face, your skin color, your eye color, your hair color, and then being able to mix and match from all those other combinations of heads that we've scanned. So it really is a little bit like looking at the Black Desert stuff. You can definitely select the cheekbone and you can move it around. You can do stuff like that, but it's not really actually bringing in other mesh or other character information.
Yeah, I think if I remember when I was playing with it, you sort of select your base head and then you modify it, and they have some really nice stuff for like the hair and altering the hair or coloring the hair and moving some stuff around. But
yeah, they have really cool stuff, but it's not actually from what I can tell, it's not really drawing from a fully another head. It's just kind of pushing and twisting and morphing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's kind of cool that we're going to try is we're going to give you those tools, but we're also going to blend heads together.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can say, oh, I like that guy and I like that guy, or I like this girl and I like this girl, and let's merge them. And maybe I'll take the jaw from here and the
kind of
forehead
that
from
mix
here,
and match thing.
and it will blend them, and it'll blend and that's one of the reasons why this live real-time rig technology is very important, because we can do all this stuff and it doesn't matter because it will all fall out of the sort of rig logic that gets calculated in real time. So the inputs, the animation doesn't need to care where the eye position exactly is, or doesn't care where the mouth position. It just needs to know that the mouth was moving and the eyes were moving around, and then the logic for the rig sort of does its magic and goes through and changes and adjusts on the appropriate rig. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting. We'll see what happens. Well, with that I think is our 10 questions that we had, and I'm sure you'll be seeing them on up and coming episodes of Around the Verse.
Probably, yeah.
Showing some more of the really cool character stuff we're doing here.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of really cool stuff, and looking forward to showing it all off.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I'm really psyched. We're sort of building this beautiful world. It's really cool.
Nice.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. I'd like to thank subscribers for making this show and the many other shows we do possible, because without your backing, we wouldn't have the sort of resources and the extra staff that do all the video production stuff we do. I'd obviously like to thank all the backers out there for making Squadron 42 and Star Citizen possible, so thank you very, very much. And it's been fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed the show, and see you next time. Bye. Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.